As a country heavily dependent on tourism, external financing, and credit growth, Turkey was particularly impacted by this crisis. Although the economy grew more than most of its peers, the problem was still that the local assets were quite under pressure, and particularly the currency depreciated by 20% over the course of the year. Looking ahead for next year, we are cautiously constructive. To put it this way, I think what we can summarize it, the situation, not just for Turkey, but for global markets in general, is short-term pain for long-term gain. As we painfully experience at the moment, once again, we are in lockdown in a lot of countries. Restrictions are getting tighter, and it's very difficult to travel. With the distribution of the vaccine, as of Q2, global growth to pick up, driven by trade first, and then later in the year, when we have full vaccination, to also tourism come back to a lot of countries and the emerging markets. This will lead to, in our view, to a significant pickup in growth, particularly in the second half of next year. But until then, it's still going to be a very, very challenging time. If we now look a bit into Turkey specifically, the problem the country is facing at the moment is, of course, a second wave, lack of tourism, rising COVID-19 cases, and this will continue to weigh on sentiment in Q1. However, we believe that the government and the central bank have done the right step in the last few months to address this. Tighter liquidity conditions was needed, which is negative, of course, for credit growth, but it reduces macro imbalances and should stabilize the currency. Nevertheless, we believe more is needed. Inflation is still on the rise. Retail continues to accumulate gold, and to offset that and to reduce that, we need to see higher short-end rates. We expect the central bank to hike rates by another 250 basis points over the next couple of months. We expect inflation to then peak in March at slightly above 15%. And then to fall later in the year. This would provide the central bank with room to cut rates as of Q2, which should then be positive for credit growth and should positive for the domestic economy. The main risk to our actually quite constructive view for the Turkish economy for next year are obviously a delay in the vaccine distribution on the one hand side. On the second, also a central bank that maybe not going to increase rates anymore and is easing actually too soon. And thirdly, something we should also not ignore, any kind of geopolitical escalation in the region or with the European Union or with the US, which has to be watched very carefully for next year.
2020 has been a very unusual year. We all had to cope with unprecedented global pandemic, which caused tremendous damage to global economies. And Turkey also went through severe recession. The Turkish lira collapsed to yet another record low. However, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We will have fairly soon a couple of vaccines available. That said, it's a long tunnel. We still have to survive winter. Lots of countries have started tightening restrictions, including Turkey, to cope with the second wave of the pandemic, which will slow down the pace of recovery. That said, there are lots of reasons to be optimistic about 2021. It will be a year when we'll be gradually returning to normality. And there will be tremendous opportunities for Turkey as well. The fact that the currency collapsed to a record low this year puts Turkey into a good position to try to convince foreign investors to shift their production away from Asia closer to Europe. So essentially, Turkish manufacturing sector gain advantage of having a weaker currency. It's important to point out Turkey needs a stable currency rather than a weaker currency. And this is what I expect for 2021. The lira